So thank you. My next guest is here, Matt Stannard, and I am Catherine Waters. Catherine with a C, Waters with two T's, Cat Waters on Facebook. And Matt, you policy director at Commonomics USA. And
That's all right. Everyone gets that.
And you just wrote a piece, Postal Banks Are People's Banks, 6 Things You Need to Know About Postal Banking. And it states, it's being called Bernie's brilliant idea, and Bernie Sanders' embrace of postal banking is indeed brilliant, both in timing and substance. But while his insurgent presidential campaign may give a credible boost to the U.S. Postal Service financial services, Sanders' endorsement is far from sufficient. To make postal banking happen requires a broad mass coalition willing to keep pushing the issues regardless of the outcome of the 2016 elections.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, I was reading it off of the Institute for Public Accuracy. I'm going to give them a shout out because
oh, for sure, they're awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about people that are that can step up to the plate. So, talk about Commonomics.
Commonomics USA is an organization. We're an advocacy organization. We are devoted to defense of the commons and policies, based on our shared ownership of the commons, our shared stewardship of the commons, and economic justice. And so things like postal banking, saving the post office because the post office is the commons, things like public banking, such as the Bank of North Dakota, which is definitely something people should look into, basic income dividends, because we have passed the point where technology is creating enough jobs for people, and we're at the point where we can afford that kind of support and generate that kind of support, and we think it'll make a better society. We think all of those things. Postal banking is part of, for us, a larger vision of people sharing and getting along.
And so the idea is to basically take the profit out of banking.
That is part of it, for sure. The necessity of constantly paying profits to shareholders in banking, as we know, has led to some really poor choices that private banks make. And they make those choices kind of at the macro level, which is why public banks like the Bank of North Dakota, but they also make that choice at the micro level where they extract, private financial services, payday lenders, for example, extract huge amounts of money from poor people. And so just as public banks are a good alternative on large economic issues, postal banks are a really good alternative, a public option, if you will, on banking for poor and working people.
I wanna kind of say that we need to get rid of the word profit, because it's more like extraction instead of profit. And I know it's probably not a popular feeling by most people, but everything is now for profit. Government doesn't exist anymore.
On that question applied to the post office, Jim Hightower, who I quote in that article, is one of many really strong voices who talk about that the good that is the post office is irreducible to profit, or irreducible to whether or not you can extract surplus value from it, the value that it generates, and it pays for itself, which is something that a lot of people don't know about the post office is that it's not taking money. It basically pays for itself. But the good that's generated goes far beyond that. And so at Commonomics USA, one of the things that we try to emphasize is that there are many definitions of value, there's many definitions of the good, and many of those are irreducible to extracted value or surplus profit.
And I just wanted to point out that your article on the postal banks are people's banks, the 6 things you need to know about postal banking, it's on occupy.com website, which I think is really a good thing.
Yeah, they're great. Big shout out to occupy.com. They are really one of the few websites out there that is publishing a lot of original content as well as a lot of content from other really good websites, but they have a huge amount of original content that people should be reading. And so thanks for mentioning them as well. Yeah. It's good to be here, by the way. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. I'm glad you were available. You know, because I mean, I'm not RT or Al Jazeera or any of those. Not yet, anyway.
That's fine.
That's why I like
that's just fine.
You know, you got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
And so the first thing that people need to know about postal banking is that it has a long, strong history.
That's right. Both in the rest of the world, in which it's still going on and quite successfully, as well as in the United States from around 1911 to 1967. It could be 1910 or 1911. Mark Armstrong, who is my colleague at Commonomics, he's the president of the organization. He and I go back and forth on 1910 versus 1911 as to when it was actually implemented. But the purpose of it was to give accounts to working people, particularly immigrant populations, and people who needed to open savings accounts and do other financial transactions, who were considered kind of, at that time, banking was even more of a sort of bourgeois activity than it is now. And so at one time, 10% of the population, or 10% of adults in America had savings accounts at the postal bank. They had a huge amount of deposits. And the post office itself is just such a large, huge organization that they have great economies of scale, which basically means they're so big that they can do things really cheaply, very inexpensively. And so when you put all that together, you have what was for many Americans, many older Americans, for example, have told me that they remember when their first account was a post office bank account, and it was kind of a big rite of passage for them as they were growing up. And the rest of the world does this too. They do it quite successfully, several other countries in the world at least. And so many people from other countries, as we've been on this crusade, have said, hey, I did the postal bank in London, or I've used the postal bank in Japan, and they really like it.
I was going to ask you if it's possible, or if you wanted to stay on like past 7 p.m. because at 7, the 2 guests that are going to be on, they did an action, well, them and, whatever 30, 40 other people did an action in front of JP Morgan Chase about Jamie Dimon because the daughter of this woman, the hashtag is called Give Susie Back Her Home to Jamie Dimon.
Right. I saw that. What an impressive action. That's great. I would love to meet them. I think I can probably stay for roughly 15 minutes or so after over that time. Anything else than that, I might irritate my partner a little bit because I'm supposed to talk to her after the call.
Okay, yeah. If any extra few minutes that you can spare would be great. If you could talk to Cynthia Johnson, the daughter of Susie Johnson, who is now 80 and still trying to get her home back from the banks that, said that she didn't make these payments when she clearly made these payments, and it's just blatant criminality going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to move then to a number 2. The thing that people should know about postal banking is this is as much about saving the postal service as it is about helping working people.
Yeah, and I kind of already talked about that,
Yeah.
but the Postal Service is really a great thing. It actually enjoys a high level of public confidence, which is funny because you definitely hear people complaining about the Postal Service from time to time. And then oftentimes those complaints turn into this narrative about how it's this bloated bureaucracy and these government workers. But that's not real public opinion data about that doesn't bear that out. In a country where a lot of institutions are not trusted very well, the post office actually is relatively more highly trusted than other institutions, and the reason for that is that it's a common place. We at Commonomics USA, we would call it a common place, a space where people go to do their business and often their commerce, and send letters and send communications. These buildings are in communities where a lot of the banks have left. The banks have bailed on these communities. And a lot of other institutions have as well. And so it represents a common space where things can get done, and can get done fairly well using, with the democratic process running the whole thing, which is also a big part of the picture of how we ought to defend and take care of the commons.
And so the third thing that people need to know about postal banking was actually discussed on Democracy Now! Last week.
With MRSA.
Right.
Yes.
I did send her an email to be on. She hasn't answered yet, but I'm going to try again because, when she was talking about these payday lenders in these neighborhoods, because that's what's replaced banks.
Yes.
And these places they're just creating debtors' prisons for these people. So it ends up being the opposite kind of a relationship. I just call it an abusive relationship because I was a psych major and just studied all about abusive relationships.
There's certainly analogies. In fact, I have a blog post out. I was a victims advocate for a while in La Crosse, Wisconsin, with some amazing people doing victims advocacy work for domestic violence victims. And the fact is, it's not just an analogy. Wall Street itself makes it hard for people to be victims, and makes it hard for people to get out from under that. And payday lenders are part of the problem. And I'm not just pulling that out of my behind. It is absolutely true that both as part of the abuse process as well as part of the emancipation and empowerment process, victims often consult or use the services of these predatory financial lenders. And so it's not you can call it that because that is part of the picture. And I think that and later on down the line, I don't want to give away the list that you're reading, but I do say, and we do believe that these predatory lenders are just as bad as people say they are and as people think they are.
I just wanted to clarify because I think at the beginning you said that Wall Street makes it hard for people to be victims, but that's not what you...
It makes it hard, Wall Street makes it hard for people to deal with being victims, to empower themselves.
I see.
And that, in the sense of kind of across the board, including victims of interpersonal violence, who are much more likely to be poor, and if they're poor, are going to have a much harder time getting services.
Right. So exactly. So what is happening? It's just like this larger domestic violence problem.
Yeah, it's a structural problem that causes that those individual, or that contextualizes those individual manifestations, certainly.
Yeah, and then when people start standing up, then they could always get arrested and put them in their for-profit prisons. But yeah, let's just talk a little bit more about the debtor's prison that is created in a lot of the marginalized neighborhoods by these payday lenders.
Sure, sure. It would be great if anyone who wanted to research this a little bit more ought to also look at the relationship between payday lenders and military bases, in which oftentimes they will cluster near military bases. The DoD has actually tried to deal with that problem and has found that it cannot really fully deal with the problem because the payday lending industry is so free to move about and do the things they do. They're in the pockets of, or they have in their pockets, quite a few elected officials, including people like Darrell Issa and others, and so people can look at what, for example, soldiers who are enlisted, people that are not making a lot of money. Even officers are not making a lot of money who rely on payday lenders. They often are adjacent to or around Native American reservations. So these people really are as bad as they seem in terms of their willingness and their general insensitivity to human plight, to the human plight of being economically challenged or disadvantaged.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's a worldwide epidemic. This lust for profit, no matter what they cost.
Mm-hmm.
And
but there are alternatives, and it's important that we, in this case, the alternative being this as Mirza Baradaran, puts it, a public bank for poor and working people that can help them out when they need help. Because God knows that we've helped out the big banks every time they've needed help.
Exactly.
Kat, one of the things that I wanted to emphasize about this is that a lot of the same reasons why the government can get away with creating money to bail out the big banks is the same reason on a much smaller and safer scale we could build systems and put systems in place to help individuals, to help economically disadvantaged individuals through crises. And the idea that you can do that, the idea that it doesn't cause the things that people say that it causes, is really important in terms of kind of the internal discussions that happen when you're convincing people that these ideas work.
I wanted to just ask you what your response was to hearing Eric Holder say that the banks are too big to fail.
Mm-hmm. And too big to jail, perhaps.
I just thought that was such an outrageous statement.
Well, a lot of people said that, and I don't remember exactly what Holder said, but I'm not. I don't know that incarcerating people is necessarily the answer, but I do know that right now, what has happened with private ownership of money, with the ability to make money off of having money and investing money, and more than that, make money off of creating money out of thin air, which is what banks do.
Right.
All of that, the fact that that's in private hands, has caused some real danger, has caused some real hazards, moral hazards, policy hazards, economic disasters. And each time these things happen, there are these discussions about what to do, and you see the ideological machines that are owned by the big banks are really in high speed. And I urge people to go to the Public Banking Institute blog. That's at publicbankinginstitute.org. We maintain a blog there where we have talked about a lot of what Wall Street is doing. And then, of course, CommonomicsUSA.org is the organization I work for, Commonomics USA, which similarly is chronicling the payday lending industry and the abuses that they commit, as well as bringing people news about what's being done about that and what we can do about that.
I was going to ask you if you could speak, because you did kind of start talking about they make money out of thin air. Because with Occupy and stuff, I kind of did a lot of things with, on the Fed and trying to educate people on the Federal Reserve and where money does come from and that it's actually created out of debt. I mean,
Yes.
And then
That's true. And it's not, I think that it's not even really that controversial of a statement. It's not controversial, for example, to say that it's not controversial to say that banks don't lend their deposits. Everyone knows that the banking doesn't work, or maybe not everyone knows that, but it's fairly common knowledge that the way banking works is not, people come and bring me a stack of cash, and I put that cash in a vault, and then I take that cash out of the vault and give it to people and lend it to people. That's not how banking works. I would urge people who want to know a little bit more about banking, about how banking works, to read the works of Ellen Brown. And I would love for you to and I'm happy to introduce you, Kat, to Ellen and have her
Sure.
on your show. She literally wrote the book on public banking, a couple of them, and was a co-founder of the Public Banking Institute, and the simple truth about the creation and distribution of money and credit is that it involves a lot of tricks of the trade, and that's inevitable. So the question is whether that ought to be in private hands or ought to be in public hands. It's our position that it ought to be in public hands, or at the very least there ought to be a public option in banking, the ability to work with transparent, democratic checks and balances, which is the way that we hope that we can govern various institutions in our society.
Okay, let me see. I was going to bring up Bill Still, who I've had on this show. It's been a while.
Yes, there you go. Yeah.
He used to be on. He says it's not what backs money, but who controls the quantity.
Yes.
It's not
that's a big part of it. So Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party in Britain, one of the things that they have put on the table, one of the policies they ran on, and one of the policies they won on, and we'll see if they can implement it there when they come to power, is this idea of quantitative easing for the people, and basically what you have is the creation of liquidity, the creation of money into various parts of your economic system, so that people can get paid, so that people can make investments, so that people can collect public services if they need to, and paying for that where the money doesn't exist now. A government can do that if they want to, but right now what they do is they do that through private entities like the Federal Reserve, like the central banks and other banks. And so the idea is, well, should there be a public bank that does that? And in North Dakota, there is a public bank that does that. It's the only public bank in the United States. And then, of course, the idea of postal banking is that in some ways, some of those same banking processes, but on a much smaller sort of community scale.
And I guess you know about Guernsey, right?
I'm sorry?
Guernsey, it's like an island off of, I think it's off the coast of England. Like they've had their own.
Guernsey pounds or whatever.
Yeah, and they've been having their own currency for quite some time now.
Right. Yeah. So you can do a lot of that with your own currency, and we're getting a little away from postal banking because we don't need to really get into a lot of that theoretical discussion to say that there ought to be financial services for people at the post office. But the larger picture is that financial services and the idea of finance is something that ought to be in public hands, not merely private hands.
And again, like I'm always trying to think of ways that the people can get some leverage from all of this. And, because I just kind of sometimes see money as the like virus the HIV that just like circulates through the system, and how everyone is just getting completely robbed. And, like, I don't know, if people just took a week and just did not exchange and not use fiat currency at all. I'm just, I don't know, I'm just always trying to think of like.
Well, there's a lot of alternatives, and one of the things, and I'm glad that actually you brought that up, is one of the things that Commonomics USA is on the brink of introducing is a legal and policy research project that depends on what we call materialized empathy, or the idea that we ought to, as a society, commit to changing our laws and policies to make them more the way some of the things that we've talked about here today. And one of the things that plays into that is the idea that people do want to disengage from corrupt and violent practices in the system. Right now, people lack the means to do that effectively. So there are hundreds of communities, intentional communities out there that are trying to live an ethical life and a sustainable life, economically just life with one another. But they run into a lot of legal problems when they try to do that. They run into a lot of issues where we need better policies in place to encourage and facilitate those types of communities. We need better policies to facilitate worker-owned cooperatives and other models. I don't even want to call them economic alternatives. I prefer to call them models of economic justice, of sustainable justice, of resource justice.
So we have just a short time before the other guests come on. I'm just going to go to number 5. Payday lenders really are as bad as we think they are. Payday lenders and their defenders are pathologically insensitive to the plight of economically disadvantaged people, especially domestic violence victims, who often rely on payday loans to gain temporary financial freedom. Like the thing that I'm always trying to, when I do make my posts on Facebook, like I'm always trying to remind people that money does not come from nature. I mean, it's like I think of it like just the genetic modified food that's out there. I mean, that's literally how I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like non-food. It's like non-money.
I see a lot of these issues as our voices being kept away from the discussion. It might be that we collectively decide that careful scientific manipulation of some food might be good, might be in our interest. It might be that we decide that some level of Wall Street and some level of private banking might actually be good for us in some way or another. The problem is we don't have a say in that in the current system, because the people who materially benefit from those decisions are also the ones who get to set the terms of the discussion. We would never allow that, on a in common parlance. We would never say, that a person who has a vested interest in the outcome of a court decision ought to be the judge in that court decision. But we do that all the time with our policies and with the way in which we, kind of make decisions about how to produce and distribute our goods.
Okay, let me bring in, neither one of the next guests are going to be on Skype, so...
Hello.
Cynthia?
Hi.
Hi, Cynthia Johnson. You're actually still on with Matt Stannard, who wrote about postal banks or people's banks, the 6 things you need to know about postal banking, and so he's was on for the half an hour, and he's going to stay on because he knows about your action with your give Susie back her home. So he's trying to come up with alternative banking. And right, like Bernie Sanders' idea of using the post offices that of course this the system wants to get rid of. So
Right.
welcome back to Organic News on Awake Radio, and tell us about the action that you had on Friday in front of J.P. Morgan Chase, and you wanted to tell Jamie Dimon to give your mother back her home.
Right. First, thank you for having me on again, and thank you again from my mom as well. She said to tell you thank you as well from last week. But on Friday, we did show up out there, and I really don't think they were expecting us. And they usually have extra security out there and everything. They were, I guess maybe in all, maybe a total about 35 people, but everybody was prepared and ready and very, very motivated and passionate about what was happening. So we handed out the posters and everything. Then before long, the police came. And they stood down on the other end of the corner just watching. But, the message was clear. We had paperwork. We had what the 3 demands were, why we were out there, and then I had something called Susie's Story, and I handed that out. We actually handed out all of the paperwork, although, a lot of people just walk by out there, and I noticed that before. But I think that was the beginning, and the way that we're phrasing this is justice for Susie or else. We kind of tagged along with the justice or else with the Million Man movement that was the march that was just had on the 10th. So, it's about you take care of Susie and make sure that she gets what she needs, all right, give her home back, as well as to punitive damages, all right, because she was not sick. She was moving around. She said she was homeless, and everything started going south from there. But, the point is, just fix what you've done wrong. J.P. Morgan Chase wants to keep saying it wasn't them, it wasn't them. But when you pull out the foreclosure documents, it has their name on it. The sheriff's sale document has their name on it. They did the damage, and by being as rude and as cruel as they were, by not looking at the receipts, not looking at anything, just shut her down. Didn't want to talk to anybody, didn't want to do anything.
Can you, I was going to say, because Matt has to go in like a couple of minutes, just give
Hi,
him...
Cynthia.
Yes.
Hi, Matt.
Yes.
Hey, much solidarity, and I want to help share your story, so hopefully Kat can exchange our contact info, because I want to share this far and wide to everyone I know.
Oh, absolutely. Please do, Kat. Please.
Sure.
I would love to do that. I appreciate it.
I'm going to give him your number right now on the Skype chat.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
So yeah, just if again, Cynthia, if you can just kind of give as sum up. I know like 14 years of like what your mom went through with the banks. Can you kind of just...
Sure. This started, like Kat said, 14 years ago. The bank lost, or the servicer lost 4 payments. They later said that they found the 4 payments, but in the next paragraph down, in the letter, they said, and now those payments are due. They went forward with foreclosure procedures, a lot of things in between, but the ones who did the damage, because it changed servicer hands multiple times, the one that did the damage was J.P. Morgan Chase. And what I said to them from the beginning was undo what you did and let's move on. They don't want to do that. They want to keep saying that it wasn't us, it wasn't us. But what it boiled down to is we stopped them in 2012 with a picket line in front of the building of my mother's house. Maybe there was 45 people out there. And it stopped the sheriff putting her out of her home. So they went to court. I don't know, somebody must have done some research or something, but 14 years later, a judge allowed them to do a caption change the name of the servicer to Wells Fargo, and they added a lender on, Massachusetts Mutual, who did not know that they were the lender at all. So they were literally missing from the day that the property was closed on. All right? Nobody knew who the lender was. So, there's a cloudy title all over the place. I've done forensic audits. We've done everything. There's an analysis of the mortgage, everything you could think of. And it all points to nobody knows anything about it. Everything's up in the air. One of the worst things about this is that the originator of her loan went to jail for mortgage fraud. Nobody's trying to pay any attention to that, too. My mom was a target. Come to find out, they were targeting especially people that were getting older, all right? The plan was to take their homes from them. So my mom just had a daughter that fights back. So that's it pretty much in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, the mortgage fraud, I mean, predatory lending, I mean, like the payday lending that we were talking about before, the debtor's prison, I mean, it's becoming like rampant all around the country. They were doing it in Ferguson too, like putting people in jail for just, like ridiculous parking tickets that they couldn't afford to pay. And and they were like literally destroying people's lives.
Yeah.
This really is as bad as everyone thinks it is and says it is.
Absolutely. This is real.
I so appreciate, Cynthia, your bravery to keep fighting, and I wish I could go in and just break the windows and rip out the guts of the whole thing. But what I will do, I promise, is to get your story out to as many people as I can find.
Wonderful. I appreciate it, Matt. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks a lot, Kat.
Because, okay, let me get, Marni is going to join us. She was also part of the action. And she's an activist. She's actually graced the cover of many newspapers. Oops.
Yes. I believe she's a performance artist. When she showed up on Friday, she was in her policeman's outfit, her uniform. It was entertainment.
Okay, I just texted her that I was calling her. So.
Hi, it's Marni.
Oh, hi, Marni.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, Kat.
Welcome to Organic News on Awake Radio, and you're on with Cynthia Johnson and Matt. He had to go. He had to hang up. Matt Stannard from Commonomics.
Hi,
okay,
Marni.
Great. Yeah, I hope you guys can hear me. You guys are cutting out a little bit.
We're cutting out a bit.
Yeah. Let me change where I'm at. So keep talking.
Hey, Marni, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good.
So, Marni, you're a performance artist and an activist. I mean, I've been seeing you at actions for years now.
For years, yes.
So, why did you go to the action on Friday for Give Susie Back Her Home in front of the J.P. Morgan Chase Bank?
Well, I'm a member of the Alternative Banking group, and Afua came to our group and kind of explained kind of what happened to her mom losing her home. And, for me, I just thought the most interesting thing was that she hadn't missed a payment, and she tried to give Chase, all the records for the canceled checks, and they still foreclosed on her home. And I feel like in this day and age in America, like how is that even possible? But, when she came to speak with us, you realize that it is possible. And I mean, for me, as a performance artist, I just thought, my God, I got to go out there and wear my the Bankster Buster uniform and, make a fuss in front of J.P. Morgan Chase and, try to, tell the public that Jamie Dimon needs to go to jail, So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
I agree.
Yeah, but it was just such a horrific story. And, the interesting thing is I was just doing a little bit of research and, I'm not an expert in this, but just researching today online, kind of historically, I guess like 30 years ago, banks were doing something called redlining. And they were essentially drawing imaginary red lines around inner city neighborhoods and refusing to give mortgages to people living in those neighborhoods. So they weren't giving mortgages to a lot of minorities and a lot of people in communities of color. And then in sort of the early mid-90s, there were essentially no more white consumers to give loans to. So then they started to enter the minority market. And what they did, instead of redlining, they did this thing sort of called reverse redlining. And what that is, it's essentially, giving predatory loans to people and having these loans kind of explode on them. So it's just interesting. There's this historical thing kind of going on. And I think in Susie's case, what you have is a situation where now even the people who are paying their loans, who haven't missed any payments, are now being targeted. And that's a whole, that's a whole kind of new thing that trend that's happening. So I just thought, I should really go to this action and, support this, since it's just a really deplorable situation.
And what happened at the action? Cynthia said the cops did come, but they stayed down the block or something, and you guys were handing out. Say it again, Cynthia. What were you were handing out? Susie's story.
Yes, there was the Susie story, and then there was the single-page document that had the 3 reasons why this action was being being.
And you handed that out to the police?
No, not to the police, but we handed it out to.
You should have. I mean,
exactly.
They wouldn't have taken it, of course. But it's like here. It's like
what was interesting, and
you want to arrest somebody here.
Yeah. What was interesting is that apparently there was a woman. I think she was from J.P. Morgan Chase. It was sort of a late, it was dark. It was, the night before Halloween. And there was a woman that stopped and spoke, I think, to us for about 45 minutes. And I think what she was trying to say is, she's like, just take control of your life and, you can succeed, and it's the American dream, and all you have to do is take control out of your, your life. But the thing with Susie Johnson's situation is that she didn't miss a payment. So she was paying on time.
Well, that's
so
what I'm
now
saying.
What you have is,
that's the ignorance of the public.
So the public really doesn't understand that this is kind of this. It's almost like the bank is like a loan shark. So in sort of like the 1960s and 1970s, what you had is that you had like loan sharks buying mortgages, and that they would push these mortgages in these sort of like minority communities.
It's the mafia.
And
they
were the ones that, they had crazy late fees, and, if you missed a payment, then your house got repossessed, and there were like these horrific contracts. But these were loan sharks, from the neighborhood doing this. Now what you have is you have the banks, the banks are doing the exact same thing. And then all the banks have to do is that the banks just pay, the Department of Justice, slaps their wrist, and they just have to pay a large fine, which is maybe 2 days of them doing business.
And then
so it's not really a consequence.
Who does the fine go to? That's what the fine doesn't even go to the people who the bank screwed over.
No, the fine just goes to the government. But I'm not saying that the banks have to pay the fine, which is also tax deductible. So it's not really a real consequence. And also the financial executive, nobody ever goes to jail. Nobody goes to jail for predatory lending and robo-signing and, all the things that they did to kind of sway people to, get involved with these bad loans. But nobody goes to jail. So the same sort of behavior keeps going on and on and on, because there's really no consequence.
Unbelievable.
So for me as a performance artist, that's what I do is I dress up as my own police officer and try to, put Jamie Dimon on a blow-up doll and try to haul him to jail, and, just to give the message to the public that this is like horrific behavior. that needs to have legal consequences. So,
And do you think the action did penetrate or did something?
well, I think this is one out of a series of actions, and I think like any opportunity that people have to spread the message, I think is a really important thing. And what I like is that this woman, and I think she did work for J.P. Morgan Chase. She talked to us for like 45 minutes. And at the end of the conversation, I think she was pretty moved, and she sort of, because she's not in the world where, she's obviously with people who are employed, with people who probably own their own apartment or own their own homes. She has no sort of, she doesn't really talk to people in sort of, difficult circumstances.
Yeah, well, exactly.
So this is at least a way for her to, kind of, talk to somebody in that kind of circumstance. So I think there was some empathy at the end of the conversation.
Well, that's good. And what was the response that you got from the people on the street?
Well, this is what's very interesting. Let me tell you something. I was trying to actually have somebody in a suit stop so I could put my cardboard Jamie Dimon face and then kind of like pretend to put the handcuffs on them to symbolize like Jamie Dimon needs to go to jail. Nobody stopped. They like think I'm a crazy person. Like, oh, I'm not going to stop. I can't talk on the street, blah, blah, blah. But then I do this sort of like sexy pose. I put my leg up and, once and Abdul was there. She's like, it's like once I do something kind of provocative, then everybody wants to stop and see what's going on. But when I ask nicely, like, would it be possible for you to stop for just 2 seconds? And like nobody stops.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I do what I do. I mean, you do something evocative, provocative, I swing my leg up, show some skin, and then everybody stops and wants to know what's going on, and then they'll talk to you. But until you do that, nothing happens. You're like completely ignored.
Yeah, it's like they don't want to play Jamie Dimon who gets arrested.
Right.
I wanted to mention, I just recently looked up Jamie Dimon, and I saw like a bunch of articles that he has throat cancer.
I know. And you know what? Lloyd Blankfein from the CEO of Goldman Sachs also has cancer.
Mm.
Which is, listen, I don't wish any sort of thing like that on anybody.
Maybe what goes around, does
comes around. Right. What's also interesting is just like, just doing some research is apparently there are some groups, there's a lot of anti-foreclosure groups popping up all over the nation. There's a group called City Life in Boston, and they have a really good success rate. They stage like foreclosure blockades. And what I think is interesting is that you stage this blockade against the bank, the media comes, covers it locally, then it goes national. Then the bank gets really, really embarrassed. So that's kind of another strategy that I think a lot of activists can kind of employ, this whole, idea of a foreclosure blockade.
Well, they did have, Occupy Homes. This was like some years ago. I think it was actually in 2000. I think it was in 2011. That's
exactly. And so I think that's kind of an example. And apparently, there's a woman named Bertha Garrett, and she's in Detroit. And she actually, there was a lot of people that were supporting her, and she ultimately won her house back. And so the bank bought her house for $10,000, and she ended up buying her house back for $10,000. And not everybody wins their home back, but it's an example of something that was successful, where this woman actually was able to repurchase her home.
They're about what is the lady's name? Mary Ward in Brooklyn, who the neighbors are rallied around her in some organizations and stopped an eviction. All right. So. I really have to get over to see her and talk to her.
See, this is what
you did.
Yeah, this
so,
is.
What you're doing is really great, because it actually gets this out into the public so people kind of know what's going on, because I think people walk by a bank and they just think, oh, this is the bank, this is fine. I mean, these are criminal institutions that are existing and actually being, having all the advantages of, government subsidies and, the bailout from the financial crisis. I mean, these are banks that are getting all this support, and they're really criminal institutions. And what I'm trying to do is make people see that, HSBC, they laundered money for the drug cartel and terrorist groups, paid a $1.9 billion fine in 2012, are continuing to embezzle money, are continuing this behavior, and nothing gets done.
Yeah,
I mean, they should lose their license. But they're just, so it's great that you're actually, talking about these kinds of issues.
I wanted to have, Cynthia, she got to talk to Matt Stannard, who was on before you guys, to talk about, it's actually on Occupy.com, his article, Postal Banks Are People's Banks, the 6 Things You Need to Know About Postal Banking.
Right.
I mean,
which is a great idea.
It's Bernie Sanders' idea.
That's right.
I mean, I don't know what is going on in the White House. I mean, that there's like all of this, like, I don't want to, just allowed, criminality and corruption to be going on, and the poor people that are going along with the system. I mean, I can't understand, like, why the people don't rise up in mass. I mean, it's so much more.
I know.
I mean, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many
people.
people.
Well, it's interesting. There was just an article in the Times recently that apparently the Department of Justice came out with this press release. I think it was like in the last like month or 2 months, about how, all of a sudden now they're going to come down hard on white collar criminals. And I just think that's a complete. I mean, most of the people in the alternative banking group, we just think that's a complete joke. Because what you have is a revolving door. You have people, bank lobbyists and CEOs of banks. Like they end up, becoming part of the next administration. So they're there to really protect, the whole banking industry, and the regulators are in bed with the banks. And, then you have people like the rating agencies, like Moody's. Like, the banks aren't going to give Moody's and the rating agencies any more money unless they AAA, their assets. So you have this like weird incestuous, situation going on, and where nobody is saying stop. So it's a real problem.
That's why the
and
people
I agree,
have
Kat.
to
I don't know why people. I don't know this political revolution in the streets. I mean, I don't know what.
Yeah.
I don't know what people are waiting
Until the money
for,
comes
because
out
I'm
of
ready.
politics, that's going to be a problem forever. But aside from all of that, all right, we have the ones that we're voting into office, and I still don't understand that, how we're going in, voting these people into office, knowing that they ignore us once they get in. Not only do we give them 1 term, we give them 2 terms, okay, and on and on and on.
Well, that's
so. The nightmare is not only are we programmed just to follow along and pay bills,
I agree.
go to
Polite
school,
society. I agree.
jack up high interest rate on loans, get a mortgage, go get a high interest rate car, everything you could think of, but work yourself to death. Work 2 jobs, all right? But we're also continuing to allow the root cause to continue to fester.
Well, this is why I was a psych major, and I was telling people about this stuff, since 1970, because I was studying about the dysfunctional, abusive family system all my life. And with Matt Stannard, who was on before you guys, like, that's what we were talking about. What is literally happening with the banks and Wall Street doing to the people is it's exactly like domestic violence. It's just like a new form of domestic violence.
Well, what also, and I also feel like, people see, somebody like Hillary Clinton, and I think because they compare her to the to the Republicans, and the Republicans are, it's just like, institutional racism all over. I mean, and Hillary seems a little bit, she seems less innocuous. But the problem is that, Hillary is also part of this 1% machinery. And I think the general public, just sees, oh, well, she's like the lesser of two evils, so I'm just going to vote for her. But I don't think people, you know, they don't read independent journalism. They don't read, like, you know, certain reporters really dig and really say it like it is. And I just think, you know, the media is corporate owned, and, you know, I just think that they don't really know kind of what is really going on. So I think people think, okay, I'm just going to vote Democratic without really knowing kind of, you know, really delving deep into things and really understanding that, you know what, well, Hillary is part of this whole 1% machinery also. And, you know, I mean, I'm hoping Bernie can do something because, you know, at least he's advocating something. You know, we do need money out of politics, and we do need a political revolution. You know?
Yes. But remember that Hillary Clinton did accept money from J.P. Morgan Chase as a campaign donation. A small one, but she still accepted it.
Yeah.
She gets money. She also gets money off the prison system, off the privatization of the for-profit prison system, too.
And she was talking to Goldman Sachs, and she was getting $400,000 for her speaking engagement. So, you know, I mean, she talks the talk. But, you know, from her past, it doesn't seem like she's really a populist. So, you know what we did, myself and also Elliot Crown, is we staged a protest outside of Hillary Clinton's fundraiser on 25th and 6th. This was like a couple months ago. You know, we got some media for that. We got some conservative media who loved us because we were protesting against Hillary. But, you know, but I think that people need to understand that she's also part of this 1% machinery, and she's also, you know, for corporations and big business. And her campaign manager was from Monsanto, and she was on the board of Walmart. I mean, you know, she can't really claim she's a populist when she's kind of in bed with big business. So, yeah.
But so anyway, it's the next guest is kind of standing by, but I want to thank you. And so again, for people to find your story, Cynthia, they can just go to #GiveSusie_back_her_home.
Yes. Or Susie's Life Matters too. But let me say this real quick, okay? And November 27th, we're building up. All right, the movement just gets stronger and stronger. The thing that we were using was justice for Susie or else. Now we're at the or else part. That unless Chase does something immediately to satisfy the situation, to rectify the situation, this is where we are now. We're at the divest and boycott part of it. Now, I had already started a divestment, but now we're going nationally with it. Everyone should remove their money from the bank, from J.P. Morgan Chase, and to move it into a credit union. Hey, we will even give you the name of some place to take your money to.
That's awesome.
Take it to the post office.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're going to be targeting seniors and homeowners to be done with this.
Yeah.
They have until November 27th to do something, or it shall get bigger.
Well, thank you. Thank you both.
And also, you know what? I'm going to, if listeners want to learn more, Susie, Alfua, I'm going to write a story I'll write a blog post for Huffington Post, so they can learn more about, Susie Johnson's situation. And then also, if anybody needs help with staging media-worthy protests with costumes and humor and characters, my website is www.revolutionissexy.com. And I give my services to a lot of people, so I'm available.
Thank you so much, and we'll have you back on again real soon.
Okay, thanks a lot,
thank
Pat.
you.
Okay.
Thanks, Talk to you soon.
Good night.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.